Okay, hi guys. Welcome to the OTT Spotlight podcast at IBC 2023, sponsored by Bedrock. It's great to meet both of you face to face.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. We've had a number of these podcasts now, and I have to admit we've explored loads of different facets, and not just OTT, but broadcasting. FAST was a really interesting conversation, as I'm sure you can imagine. But this one really interests me because obviously the home ecosystem and what we're going to be talking about, owning a home content ecosystem, is something where all of the rest of the spectrum of this industry ends up in front of the eyes of the duo, and what that means in terms of the players that are in that space and trying to own that space. So I'm pretty confident we're going to talk about some interesting things. First of all, I'd love to give you guys the opportunity to introduce yourself, and if you wouldn't mind as well, just kind of give me a bit of a flavour for what your posture is on this topic based on your experience coming into the conversation.
And Lawson, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Chris, for having us.
Pleasure.
I was eager to try to understand why consumers and how to get consumers engaged in service. And for me, the big question is who will learn this battle for the home, for living, for the home itself. And is it more the manufacturer of a TV set, or is it an operator? So I think it's a big good question to ask, and I'm kind of forward to the discussion.
Or give us some of your background in there. What kind of things have you done?
I'm an industry analyst by trade. I worked many years as an industry analyst for broadband media entertainment in EMEA, also in Asia Pac and Latin America. And in the last couple of years, I do a lot of inter-able consulting or management positions for telcos and for media companies. But I also work with a lot of scale-ups and startups. As we know now, we call them scale-ups, no longer startups. That try to engage with bigger corporations, enterprises, mostly in the video tech space. So there's one that looks after recommendations, AI. One is in the advertising space, and one is more on the CPE device manufacturing. So I was in between the content and technology. Has pretty much the ecosystem where I reside, where I'm working.
So you get a great view of lots of different organisations there, and looking through the lens of your experience.
Yeah, and also different markets. Yeah. Because I think that's always especially in media, most companies think that Europe is one market, but Europe is not a homogeneous market. And you have to accommodate different regulatory frameworks, different consumer behavior, and that's not often difficult, but a challenge to translate.
It always amazes me. Europe is only 2% of the world's landmass, but it's got so many different laws, cultures, regulations, all of that stuff. Okay, well, let's do a quick introduction for yourself, Lara.
Yeah.
You're a Google wag.
I'm a Google wag, yeah. So my name is Lyle Sumner. I am seemingly the only person in the world with my name, as I was just explaining to you before we started recording, which is very strange. So it's very easy to find me if you know my name. You can, I've just started a consulting company, so funnily enough, lylesumner.com was available. I've just been working at Roku. I was running the Roku channel for the international markets. So that's why currently live in Mexico, Canada, and the UK.
Wow.
Working for Roku was obviously a very interesting exercise. Previous to that, I'd been at Liberty Global for 12 years doing product development. So building television platforms. All the features and everything else that goes on top of those, understanding about different markets that within that family, what they needed to make a successful home environment, and also have a very good view of obviously the competitors, the tech competitors coming into that space, whether it's Google or anybody else looking to own that home environment with their technology. Previous to that, I was running a television platform in the UK. If anyone's from the UK, they may remember Home Choice. So actually the very original video on demand pioneers. I was head of film and television for Home Choice, which turned into Talk and eventually. Previous to that, I was in SBS in Australia. So broadcast television is my original. And then I also make feature films.
So now everyone else is going to benefit from the equity of your experience. They're going to sell that to them.
Yeah, exactly. I go back, as obviously you guys do as well. People didn't understand what we were talking about when we talk about video on demand. Now we have to call it streaming. But, obviously behavior has completely changed, and those of us that were working in it that long ago, we can see it, and it was amazing that we could see it and had the opportunity to just experiment and see where these how we could play with consumer behavior and learn about consumer behavior, learn about binging and all these other things. And if someone just wants to sit in their house all day and watch episode after episode,
not just binging. They'll be watched when you're binging now with all the data and getting captured about it. That part is kind of a nice segue into laying the foundations for our conversation today, because we were talking about fast earlier with Marion Launcher, and so Marion quite well, like it, and it was interesting looking at how the pendulum is swinging when it comes to actual models of consumption, when it comes to television and content, that are really similar actually to what we knew a few decades ago. The main difference is actually the fact there's underlying vast amounts of data that can be capitalized and utilized now. I'm interested, if we look at the future of the home entertainment system, the battle for dominance, what does it mean? When the consumer's got their lean back past channels, VOD, SVOD, AVOD, whatever, actually, what does it mean when this home dominance, who are the players in that space? In what we're actually talking about, but we're talking about the home content ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of take that. I think we're really talking about, I think there's a tech version of that, and that is, which voice assistant, who is helping you entertain yourself, who's helping you turn on your lights and, do everything else, all of your Wi-Fi connected devices, who is really owning that tech piece, who is providing you the pipe to allow you to actually access that content, whether you're getting it via Starlink or whether you're getting it via fiber in the ground or any other means, 5G. So there is obviously a very big tech component to that, and then there is really how well is anybody being entertained? Am I getting the value out of whichever experience? And so there's I think a lot of people are focused on that sort of experience side. And so that, I think, draws in different companies into that space. But that's sort of how I'll define it. I don't know.
Also, I think that's one component is the technology, is how you get into the home, but also who makes the decision in the home. So who owns the bill, so to speak, right? So who makes this decide on what will be purchased? And I think what we also see is the change of consumer behavior towards media. So before, still we have these big events where people gather in a living room and watch things together, but I think we're getting much more fragmented in the way how media is being consumed. And as the formats, you remember that Quibi, that new company that was invented by a former Disney CEO, they thought about people who will now go for smaller pieces. So I think what we need to understand better in the future is what consumers expect and how it's being catered to them.
Yeah, that all ended up with Roku. Roku brought all that Quibi content.
I know.
But, obviously based on consumer behavior that dramatically changed when the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
People weren't necessarily sitting on the bus or the train watching content, but you're absolutely right. Like how you consume and what that behavior is, and then who you're trying to reach at any point in time.
And also it's interesting when you look at media behavior over the last, say, 70, 80 years. So usually you had a break. So you consumed a lot of media when you were young, and then as soon as you start buying into society, you consume less media. And it will be very interesting to see what happens to Generation Y, X, Z.
Yeah.
What happens when they grow up and being adults, if they continue with that kind of media behavior.
That's definitely something I want to get into, Annette, because I think that there's if you think of that ecosystem, that topology, to use a technical term, right from the speed and feed into the home, the infrastructure in the home, you try to get into an Internet of Things type conversation about all of the things that have got an IP address that are then connected to that feed. but actually the number of devices that are then facilitating relationships, I suppose. Like, you know, if I think of, I've got a 13-year-old boy, the way he consumes content on TikTok, sports for example, totally different to the way that I did when I was 13, where you'd watch the pre-match, the match, and then the post-match analysis. He doesn't understand that. It's like, you know, he watches it all in 3 minutes.
Yeah, but I mean, that also brings in, you know, one of the other layers to that home environment. You know, those of us that are parents obviously know that, you know, what we will allow our kids, or what sort of control we may necessarily want for our privacy concerns for our kids, or, you know, the theme of the content that they're watching. All of those things really come into play, and, you know, how easy or how, you know, transparent is it for as an adult to actually, you know, manage.
Yeah.
Also, I think interesting from a business model side these days, if you think about it, if you acquire content when licensing content, you already been limited to a certain amount of devices, right? So what's happening there? Yeah, and speaking of devices, what we also touched on is what is already connected to what? I mean, to the broadband, but then to each other. When you look at, on average these days, so people have 12, 14, 15 devices connected to the broadband, and that's also interfering, right? And I mean, it is.
People don't realize all that different devices are competing with each other and competing with their neighbours and everything else.
It amazed me. You know, in my house in the UK, I had to call Sky recently to try and get something fixed. They said, log into the router. How many devices are on it? I was like, wow. There was so many that I do know about them, but I hadn't really thought of it. And they're all sucking that feed, that broadband feed up.
Yeah.
Sky's an interesting example, right? Because I think they're a great example of trying this dominating the home content ecosystem. You've got a kind of telco background in it. I'd really like to know what your perspective is when you objectively analyze what they're doing when it comes to trying to own everything.
Yeah, I think we call it in the telco world as a more for more strategy that you follow. So you upsell the customer to more services, and that includes these days also devices, right? So, and it's all about the wallet share, and that you create stickiness and that you prevent sharing. And therefore you need to have sort of an aggregation strategy, and that's what only applies to the devices, but also applies to the content that you deliver. So when you look at the big portals of the big telcos in Europe, also like, but also would include on the pay TV side, you not only get access to Sky, you get also access to Netflix, you get access to the Zone, but also you have all of a sudden not only a Sky Glass, a TV set, but you also have maybe a router where you have an IoT, you have home surveillance. When you look at Comcast in the US, they told me a couple of years ago they already had about 12.8 different devices in the home. So it's extended fully from the traditional TV video delivery set-top box to a TV set, to a router, to it's getting broader and broader.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if you're owning the pipe as a business, then, you know, whether somebody is streaming games or streaming games on your platform, or, watching content or doing anything else, then you're happy. You know, you want that consumption to go up. You know, you want a high def 3D, with holograms in your room, because, you know, that's a benefit to, if you own that pipe. Suck it up and use it. So
what's your thoughts, guys, on the TV manufacturers? You know, like, it's really important to them, right? And their business model is transactional sales, where someone buys in the unit. It's not a subscription type thing, or maybe it's evolving towards that. But, you know, they buy a TV and it's got everything as much as possible in it nowadays.
Good point. I think it's the Trojan horse. Because, I mean, now, the telcos do the same, right? They're selling you, and the TV manufacturer also sells you hardware, and it comes with some content. And maybe, they will monetize on it, they will participate in the revenue from a subscription there, because they bring you reach. But I think the underlying real money to make is in the data in the future. The data for the advertisers to get better data, but also the data for the operators to understand their users better.
Yeah.
But I think in a moment, I think it's very difficult. I mean, you have maybe from a Roku experience more insights than I have, but to monetize from a aggregated bundle that you share the revenue with a Netflix, with a DAZN, with an Amazon, I think that's much bigger challenge than in the end to monetize the data that you can get from this consumption.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many components of what you say. I mean, honestly, I've always been somewhat amazed, even though like I'm completely into technology. I've been developing television products my whole life. You know, television is so old, and it's fundamentally we're still doing the same things, sitting there watching content on our backsides on our sofas. You know, so. But it always does amaze me that people continue to buy new television sets.
Yeah.
You know, they're obviously always, technology coming up. I remember the IBC, that was the 3D IBC. That sort of went by the wayside somewhat. I'm sorry if you're a TV manufacturer, but it did. There are a lot, obviously one of the loads of Roku was a lot about, actually, you go around the world and you go outside of Europe, and actually it's not just the big players of Samsung and Sony and LG making the television sets, which you primarily get sort of in the wealthier countries, but actually you end up with a vast array of manufacturers making television sets. And obviously if you're from Shenzhen and you're very good at making television sets, then how do you maintain relevancy? How do you sell your television set within the markets you go to? How do you keep your software up to date? And then you just want to keep manufacturing television sets. So I think it's a really interesting space for the operating system for TVs. And I think there's a number of different sort of companies that can obviously in that space and can move into that space to run operating systems. I think what you're seeing now is a lot of UIs being actually relatively similar. We've really converged on television UI, I have to say. I haven't done this for a long time. I remember doing the IBC sort of keynote and like, hey, wow, look at this. And now it's like, okay, well, we've really converged on a way of doing UIs. Not to say that there's innovation is still there, especially with AI and virtual assistants and all this kind of thing. And that's going to go really well. But, we are, we're at a point where we can, actually, I forgot what I was saying.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Sky Glass.
Yeah.
Smart or obvious?
Smart.
Why?
When you look at now Partners as a parent company, what they did, and if Sky could use that Sky Glass as a Trojan horse in the same way that Comcast was able to upsell the set-top box and the connectivity alone. And I think Sky Glass, when you eliminate the cost for the set-top box, which is around about, in the Sky case, between 8 and 12 tiers, that costs you around €180, and you infect that into the manufacturing of the TV set, you make a really nice margin in selling something instead of having a capex-heavy business that you need to invest into a set-top box device.
Yeah.
It is from a business case. It is a serious product. Absolutely makes sense. I mean, eliminate that expense. And second of all, if you think about it, Sky has 3 major markets. I mean, Germany is primarily, we know, and from what Comcast has done, I think that's a perfect opportunity for Sky to upsell other services in the home that they have got so much connectivity because of the satellite hosts, right? So you don't have return path. But I think it's for me, it makes absolute sense.
Right.
Yeah, I think honestly, I was also working at Liberty Global, who looked us very carefully, obviously at the Sky Glass launch, and I think it does make sense in some markets when you've got certain penetration. And also having that Roku perspective, where they have also, got numerous television sets and have actually gone into the like Comcast, sound bars and all sorts of other sort of connected devices in the home relating to your sort of television experience. I think there is sometimes a chance of not having the right focus, I think, for an organization, in terms of, am I here to manufacture television sets, which is sort of complicated? I think a company like Comcast, Sky, yeah, absolutely, I agree. It makes sense. They have the market penetration in their markets, they have the scale to really make this, make them work. But we also, I think it always takes a little bit for consumers to change their behavior. I know that a lot of the negative feedback around Sky Glass was really about, people in the UK were and are particularly wedded to their home recorders and having those recordings, and moving everyone to cloud recordings, or moving everyone to actually not even having recordings, and the idea that actually you don't need to record is a reality. You can have everything on your streaming service and find this through the iPlayer, or find it through one of the apps that are on the platform. And it's actually changing that behavior was and probably still is a very big difficulty for Sky Glass consumers. It's also how well you can communicate and how well that audience understands and what they're getting, and whether they would take that leap. And in some cases, it's just time, will change their behavior.
Exactly, because they had always the case when it's popped out new CPE that people have lost their recordings, right? And when you look at the penetration rates of recordings in the footprint of the pay TV operators, you will be amazed how low they are sometimes, right? It depends really on the market, but you get your point. You don't want to have to disrupt the user experience. You want to keep the same user experience moving on to a new device, so you don't want to disappoint your customer base. I think it's all about scale in that case, because you have 3 addressable markets: Italy, Germany, and the UK. So it makes sense for a smaller operator doing the same what Sky has done. I think doesn't make sense. I mean, it's not no reasons there.
One of the things that perpetually occurs in these kind of conversations is the arrival at a point in the dialogue where we're talking about data, right?
Right.
The capture of data, the access to data, but very quickly you migrate that dialogue into one where it's about how's that data used. Data's only data until some kind of intelligence is made from that. And I want to wed that topic to the point around Internet of Things and, the home content ecosystem, maybe with a wider horizon in terms of what that constitutes, because we're obviously sitting at IVC, so we're thinking about the TV as the heartbeat of the home content ecosystem. But is that going to be the case going forward? I mean, will it actually, when everything's connected, will it be something different? Will things like Google Home, Hey Google and play my favourite playlist, I always do that in the kitchen. Is the emphasis going to change and widen, because the TV is kind of the centre of the home, and from a recent legacy perspective, is that going to change with the Internet of Things and all of this data that is being captured now?
I don't see it. I see a vision that looks like Back to the Future, where Marty Fly has this giant television set in his room, or a big screen. I think the idea that we would move away from having screens, or some form of dominant way to interact. I mean, maybe that sort of holographic sort of thing that I was mentioning, but really, I think for the foreseeable future, where we'll be looking at large screens within the home, that despite the fact that yes, all your family members will run away and watch this, that, whatever together, when you can watch something together, when you do watch something together, there is a joy to that. There is a pleasure going to the cinema. There is a pleasure watching something together. So that's an experience that's like, well, hang on, this is good. This is fun. We like watching this sport. We like watching this, event or dancing or whatever it happens to be, together. And so that co-viewing, I think just human behaviour.
There's an emotion attached to it.
That co-viewing will always remain, regardless of yes, we've all got phones, we've all got this, are we at maximum, independent viewing? I don't know. Forces, the behaviours continuing to adapt as sort of people get older. And so obviously we have a pretty good view of the younger generation now, and even sort of our generation, to understand really how people are going to behave. So I think that transition is well visible in my mind.
But I also think when we think about IoT, and the question is, if other way around, we look at the TV markets, pay TV is revenues are going down, advertising is going down. So you need to find new revenue streams to monetize the service that you provide. So data is one of them. But then think that through, then you have data from the television, from the devices, from your fridge, from your, and who will own these data lakes and do something with it, right? And what could you do with it? You can sell it maybe to an advertiser.
Not to mention your browsing history as an ISP. You understand everything that everybody's doing.
Talking about devices, the connectivity, connected devices, and that is the pressure with the companies that you mentioned. Who can manage these kind of amounts of data and it makes sense on, right? Put some intelligence. Is that every leaving and every payment to Google, Amazon, these data drivers would really know how to manage?
I think one of the interesting things there is that I think up to now, the value of that data in a large way has really been about advertising and how well you can target and how well what CPM rate you can charge based on how well you're targeting that consumer. So that ability for products and services to reach the right consumer, that is hugely valuable. You can see that already, and that's an existing dynamic. However, I think when you start talking about AI, and it had to come eventually, and you start talking about AI, and you start talking about AI is obviously amazing, but it's very reliant on all the data sets that you put into it, and what does it have available to you? We are now actually going to be at a point where hang on, that data, it may not necessarily be about advertising anymore, basically something completely different that data is valuable for. I've signed up to a new email client on my phone, and it's free, but it's using my data.
I can give you a great example. So I'm the CEO of a recruitment company. We're a global recruitment company. For the last 3 years now, we do AI-based psychometric evaluations of people. They don't even know we're doing it, and they're 97% accurate.
Right.
And how is it doing that? It's doing that because it knows what your behaviours are, not just your browsing history, but all the other Internet of Things type stuff.
Right.
And it's mind-blowing. It blows my mind. We do it. We've got the engine.
Yeah.
When you think about, we have in most countries an over aging population, so you can also start anticipating things, right? That people through their behavior.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can talk about medical services and other sort of services that can be brought to the house, into the house, or we look now at people in, I don't know if it's the UK, but I see a lot of health insurance companies where you can have a virtual session with your doctor or with your pharmacist.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And I think that is the data I think that makes more sense in the future to embrace than entertainment watching behavior. I would say that's not really the
Facilities.
facilities, because that you can monetize to ads or whatever, or in more transactional based videos that you recommend, whatever. But I think that is the real where the money is. It's also when we think about the environment, that overheating of things and heating system itself, the whole utility around the house. It's also, I think, much more interesting from a
for me, and this is what I'd like to kind of wrap it up with you guys, is what should we expect to see over the course of the next 2 to 5 years? Just to give an example of what you just said, and I live in Dubai, and when I get to the airport, the heating and electricity authority send me a message on my app, say, how long are you going to be away for? Do you want to turn the heating off so you don't the aircon, so that you don't waste money whilst you're away? They know I'm at the airport.
Oh, wow.
And they know I'm therefore highly likely to be leaving. And they ask me if I want to switch the aircon off for the next week or two. Now that's the home, right?
That's Big Brother watching.
Yeah,
right?
well,
But I think it's given the fact that we have so many environmental challenges, I think it's great that right? They didn't let over-consuming electricity. But I think you see more this interconnectivity between devices and services.
Yeah.
And I think that you need to park that more in the future, because I think we should start frustrating the consumer because that device can't take with this device, or you can only watch that content on on a big screen but can't watch it on a smaller screen, or it's you limited. Often we see the content industry we limiting our customers is through divide in the consumer.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting point about integration. Different manufacturers, typically you're seeing the companies like Apple that just want to keep you in there. The ecosystem. Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Arm?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of 2 to 3 years, what's going to happen with a crystal ball in front of me, because it is right in front of me. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with your description of being at Dubai Airport. And that's really about convenience. The fact that things will happen for you without needing to do them, or without put that extra effort and resource into, searching through a Lord catalog to find a piece of content, or doing, a lot of these activities that we sort of may have neglected, or maybe didn't know we needed to do, or we spent time doing. I think that convenience factor will, be driven, exponentially forward in the next 2 to 3 years. As we start seeing, the technology be adapted into consumer products and consumer assistance, and, as you said, in the background, things just happening for you. Your customer service is going to be revolutionized by data sets and AI. There's so many things that are going to come in here, but so I think it's really exciting. It's exciting for entertainment, exciting for convenience. So
predictive analytics is one of the things that I've seen to do more that we anticipate within outbreak.
Yeah.
And also, I think that also from a content side, I think it should be much more fun when you turn on the TV, that something is recommended to you, or something that because not because you watch this and it's traditional recommendation, but more about that's going back to query that I really liked about the day, the time, the weather outside. The fact there's much more things in how content is being paid. Right?
Yeah, and obviously, the actors on strike at the moment, they're very concerned about the real, very real, path ahead of us, which is people being able to create that content. If I say, hey, I want to create a story about dogs on the moon, and actually, can you make that for me? I want to watch it.
That's crazy.
And can it be starring Christopher Walken? Well, I go, great.
Just like that.
These things are ahead of us.
Yeah.
We can presume that they're not, but they really are.
I think that is inevitable. Yeah, absolutely.
So, there is some very interesting ethical conversations.
And who knows what we're going to be talking about if we're back here this time next year. Maybe we can see whether or not we can get AI-generated stories for our kids. And if Dubai is still telling me when I need to turn my air conditioning off before a flight. For now, Annette Schaefer, founder of The Big Picture, thank you so much for your intelligence, your insights, your passion about this topic. And Lyle Sumner, the Google Watt, good luck with your new business.
Great.
I really wish you all the best, and thanks for your passion on this topic as well.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks.
Okay.